If you sing for me, here and now, I will pay you $5 million in cash, the young Singaporean scion said, gesturing towards the magnificent Steinway grand piano in the corner of the hall. His voice was calm, yet every word resonated with the accustomed authority of a man for whom the world was but a vast chessboard. And, if I refuse? The girl in the simple white waitress blouse asked coolly, her gaze unwavering from his dark eyes. Then I will learn that some things truly cannot be bought, he smiled, a smile simultaneously charming and dangerous, like a blade hidden in velvet. But he did not know he stood before no mere elite hotel waitress, but a woman whose voice once held Europe's finest concert halls spellbound. He did not know that the offer he considered generous and irresistible was, in fact, the cruelest insult imaginable. And he certainly did not know that this evening would change them both forever, shattering everything they believed about themselves and each other. The six-star Lumina Towers Hotel, in the heart of Singapore, was an embodiment of Asian luxury and global sophistication. Its facade of white composite materials and shimmering glass sparkled under the unforgiving equatorial sun, a mirage materialized through the efforts of the world's best architects and a virtually unlimited budget. Inside, the temperature was maintained at a perfect 22 degrees Celsius. The air was filled with the subtle notes of ginger flower and sandalwood, screamed of a wealth ordinary mortals could scarcely imagine. On this scorching June evening in 2023, the hotel's grand ballroom, the Sky Gallery, was prepared for a reception discussed in high circles for weeks. Today, it was to host a private art auction, organized by Ascendant Auctions, exclusively for a select circle of collectors and connoisseurs from around the globe. Unique lots were on offer, from ancient Chinese porcelain miniatures to works by contemporary Singaporean and regional artists, whose paintings fetched millions at international auctions. Approximately 80 guests were expected, each either a billionaire, a scion of one of Southeast Asia's ruling families, or the head of a major multinational corporation. The minimum bid for any lot started at $100,000, with some exhibits valued in the tens of millions. This was not just an auction, it was a demonstration of the power, influence, and cultural supremacy of an elite that could afford to buy priceless works of art as ordinary people bought souvenirs. Among the hotel staff, busy with the final preparations for this grand event, moved an almost unnoticeable tall, slender girl, with ash-blonde hair, pulled back in a severe bun. Her name was Safir Maurel. Officially, she had worked at the hotel for only 3 months as a banquet waitress. 28 years old, with delicate European features, high cheekbones, and large gray-green eyes that seemed too sad for her age. Her graceful hands with long fingers, and an unwaitress-like elegant movement. All these hinted at a person out of place, like an aristocrat forced to hide under the guise of a servant. Safir meticulously checked the table settings, arranging baccarat crystal glasses, each worth several $1,000s, laying out silver cutlery with gold plating, and smoothing the perfectly ironed linen napkins embroidered with the hotel's golden monogram. Her movements were refined and professional, the result not only of 3 months of work, but also of many years of a completely different life, of which none of her colleagues had any inkling. "Safir, are you done with the main table?" Auntie Lily, the senior waitress, called out. A friendly 50-something Singaporean, Auntie Lily had worked at the hotel for 20 years and knew all its secrets. "Yes, Auntie Lily, all set," Safir replied in English, with a slight French accent she hadn't quite managed to shed over her years abroad. "Excellent. Remember, tonight is a special evening. Very important people will be here, including Marcus Lim himself. They say he flew in specially from Jakarta on his private Gulfstream G650 just to participate in the auction. Be as attentive and inconspicuous as possible. These people don't like to be looked at, but they expect impeccable service." Safir nodded, though the name Marcus Lim stirred no particular awe in her. In 3 months at this hotel, she had served so many billionaires, celebrities, and powerful figures that she had long ceased to be impressed by titles and fortunes. To her, all these people were the same: wealthy, often arrogant, always confident in their exceptionality, and right to demand the impossible. She hadn't chosen this job by calling. 3 months ago, Safir had flown to Singapore with her last few dollars, desperately needing any work that would allow her to stay and not return to Europe, where a trail of scandal and a ruined career haunted her. Working as a waitress in an elite hotel was not a dream, but a necessity, a way to become invisible, to dissolve into the crowd of service staff, to forget the past and try to build some semblance of a future. By 7 p.m., as the last rays of the sun painted Singapore's skyscrapers in golden rose hues, the first guests began to arrive. Limousines, Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Ferraris, each more luxurious than the last, lined up at the hotel entrance. Doormen in impeccable uniforms opened doors, greeting the owners of these cars and their companions. Women in haute couture evening gowns adorned with jewels whose value exceeded the annual budget of a small nation. Men in bespoke designer suits from Brioni and Tom Ford. Women in elegant designer hijabs or daring evening wear. All moved with that peculiar confidence bestowed by absolute power and unlimited financial means. Safir stood by the service entrance to the hall, observing this parade of wealth with a detached expression. Once, in another life, she herself had been part of this world, albeit from a different country. She remembered the admiring glances, the applause, the flowers thrown onto the stage after her performances in Europe's best concert halls. But that was long ago, in a past life that ended 3 years ago on one terrible evening in Milan when everything collapsed. Now, she was just Safir, a waitress, an invisible part of the decor for these people, no more important than the crystal chandelier above their heads or the Persian rug beneath their feet. "Safir, take your position at the main table," Auntie Lily instructed. "You'll be serving the VIP section, where Marcus Lim and his associates are seated." The girl nodded and headed towards the designated table. It was located on a small raised platform, with an excellent view of the entire hall and the stage where the auction was to take place. The table was set with particular extravagance. A pristine tablecloth of Egyptian cotton, arrangements of white orchids and roses, candles in golden candelabras, and dinnerware of the finest hand-painted porcelain. Precisely, at 7:30 p.m., he entered the hall. Marcus Lim was young for his wealth, but already managed a fortune. Forbes estimated at $8 billion. Tall, about 190 centimeters, with perfect posture and the confident gait of a man accustomed to being the center of attention. His bespoke suit was tailored from the finest silk, his watch a unique Patek Philippe, grand complications worth over $1 million. But it was not his clothes or jewelry that made him memorable. It was his face, strikingly handsome, even by local standards, where a man's looks were valued no less than his fortune. Regular Asian features with high cheekbones, a straight nose, sharply defined lips, a short, neat beard trimmed with perfect precision, highlighting a strong jawline, and eyes, dark, almost black, intelligent, piercing, with that peculiar sparkle found in people who know their worth and exactly what they want from life. Marcus did not enter alone. He was accompanied by a small retinue, 2 bodyguards in dark suits, maintaining a respectful distance. His personal assistant, Mr. Tan, an elegant man in his 40s with a tablet in hand, and 3 friends, equally young, wealthy, and self-assured, representatives of Singapore's elite. The hall seemed to hold its breath as he made his way to his table. Conversations hushed, heads bowed respectfully, women cast admiring glances. Marcus Lim was not merely wealthy. He was a symbol of Singapore's new elite, educated, cosmopolitan, yet deeply rooted in its own dynamic traditions. He was educated at Oxford, owned several international companies ranging from tech startups in Silicon Valley to a network of luxury hotels worldwide. He was known for his philanthropic projects and, simultaneously, his ruthless business approach. But he was also known for his temperament. Marcus Lim tolerated no incompetence, forgave no mistakes, demanded perfection in everything around him. Those who worked with him said he had 2 states, absolute calm and icy fury, and the transition between them could be instantaneous, like a lightning strike. Safir stood by the serving table, ready to begin service, as Marcus and his entourage took their seats. She noticed him scan the room with an appraising gaze, lingering for a few seconds on the paintings displayed for auction, then turning to his assistant, discussing something quietly. "Champagne or mineral water, Your Excellency?" Auntie Lily asked, approaching the table with a perfect bow. "Lime-infused mineral water," Marcus replied, without looking up from the auction catalogue. His voice was deep, calm, with a slight British accent from his Oxford days. "For everyone." Auntie Lily gestured to Safir, who quickly headed to the bar to fetch the drinks. A few minutes later, she returned with a silver tray on which stood glasses of mineral water, garnished with lime wedges and fresh mint. She began placing the glasses before the guests, moving silently and efficiently, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible, as Auntie Lily had taught her. But as she placed the last glass before Marcus himself, their gazes accidentally met. It lasted only a second, perhaps even less. Safir immediately lowered her eyes, as befitted service staff. But in that brief moment, something transpired. Marcus froze, looking at her with an expression she couldn't interpret. Surprise, interest, Recognition. "Are you new here?" he unexpectedly asked in English. Safir flinched, not expecting to be addressed at all. "Yes, Your Excellency. I've been working here for 3 months," she replied softly, not lifting her gaze. "Look at me." It was not a request, but a command, though spoken in a calm tone. Safir slowly raised her eyes. Marcus studied her face with the same attention with which he had examined the art catalogue a minute earlier. There was nothing indecent or offensive in his gaze, rather a professional curiosity, as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You're not from around here," he stated. "Where are you from?" "France, Your Excellency," Safir replied, feeling a chill run down her spine from this attention. She didn't want to stand out, didn't want to be noticed, especially by people like him. "Interesting," Marcus drawled, and a note she couldn't identify entered his voice. "Your name?" "Safir, Your Excellency." "Safir," he repeated, as if savoring the taste of the name. "Very well, you may go." She hastily retreated, feeling his gaze on her even as she moved to the service table. Her heart beat faster than usual, and Safir inwardly chided herself for this foolish reaction. What was so special about a billionaire asking her a couple of questions? He had probably already forgotten her existence, returning to his business and friends. But she was mistaken. Throughout the evening, as the auction proceeded in full swing, as bids soared to astronomical sums, as the hall sometimes held its breath in tension and sometimes erupted in applause after another successful sale, Safir periodically caught Marcus Lim's gaze. It was elusive, lasting only an instant, but she felt it like a physical touch. Marcus Lim successfully acquired 2 lots, a Tang Dynasty ceramic horse for $2 million, and a modern abstract painting by a young Singaporean artist for $300,000. He placed his bids calmly, almost disinterestedly, simply raising his numbered paddle, but no one dared to outbid him after a second raise. Everyone knew that when Marcus Lim decided to acquire something, he acquired it, regardless of the price. By 10 p.m., the official part of the auction concluded. The lots were sold, record set. Ascendant Auctions organizers beamed with satisfaction. Revenue exceeded $15 million. Now the guests split into small groups. Some continued to discuss their purchases, others moved on to business discussions, while some simply enjoyed the drinks and exquisite canapés that the hotel staff continued to circulate. Safir was exhausted. 4 hours on her feet in uncomfortable shoes, constant tension from the need to be impeccable, heavy trays of drinks and appetizers. All this compounded into physical and emotional fatigue. She only dreamt of the evening ending, of returning to her tiny rented room in the old heart of Geylang, taking off this cursed uniform, showering, and simply collapsing onto the bed. But the evening wasn't over yet. "Safir," Auntie Lily called softly, approaching her. "Marcus Lim requests a Dom Perignon, vintage 2008. The bottle is in the wine cellar. I've already called Monsieur Delacroix. He'll hand it to you. Take it directly to his table and open it there." The girl nodded and headed for the service elevator that led to the hotel's basement, where the legendary Lumina Towers wine cellar was located, one of the finest collections of wines and champagne in all of Southeast Asia. The sommelier, the elderly Frenchman Monsieur Delacroix, was already waiting for her with the precious bottle in a special ice bucket. "Voilà, mademoiselle," he said in French, which Safir of course understood perfectly. "Be careful. It's an exceptional vintage, worth about $2,000 a bottle. Mr. Lim is one of the few guests who can appreciate such quality." "Thank you, Monsieur Delacroix," Safir replied in French, taking the bucket. The old sommelier raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You speak French?" "Ah, of course, you're French. But why such a sad look on a young Parisian?" "Long story," Safir answered evasively and hurried to the elevator, unwilling to continue the conversation. Returning to the hall, she headed towards Marcus's table. Most of his guests had dispersed. Only 3 remained. Marcus himself, his assistant Mr. Tan, and one of his friends, a young man in an expensive suit who, judging by the conversation, was discussing an upcoming real estate deal. "Your Excellency, Dom Perignon, 2008, Safir announced quietly, placing the bucket on the table. "Excellent," Marcus nodded. "Please open it." Safir carefully extracted the bottle from the bucket, wiped it with a pristine white towel, and began removing the foil and wire cage. Her movements were confident and professional. In 3 months, she had opened hundreds of champagne bottles. But at this moment, something went wrong. Perhaps the bottle was too thoroughly chilled, perhaps the pressure inside was higher than usual, or perhaps it was simply cruel irony. As Safir slowly turned the bottle to carefully extract the cork, it flew out with a loud pop, and a stream of sparkling wine sprayed sideways, hitting directly onto Marcus Lim's immaculate bespoke suit. Time seemed to stop. Safir froze with the bottle in her hands, staring at the growing wet stain on the clothing of one of Singapore's most influential men. Her face pallid, her hands trembled. Only one thought flashed through her mind. I'll be fired. No, worse, I'll be deported. It's over. Marcus slowly rose from his seat. There was no anger on his face, rather bewilderment, as if he couldn't believe such a thing was even possible. His friend and assistant stood still, not knowing how to react. A muffled murmur rippled through the hall. Many had noticed the incident, though they tried not to show their curiosity. I am so sorry, Your Excellency, Safir whispered, placing the bottle on the table with trembling hands. It was a terrible mistake. I didn't mean to. Shh, Marcus said calmly, taking out a handkerchief and dabbing at the stain. It's just champagne, not blood. His unexpected calm was almost worse than if he had yelled. Safir knew that such people never raised their voices at staff publicly. They simply destroyed careers with a single phone call. Auntie Lily rushed to the table, pale as a sheet. Your Excellency, 1,000 apologies. This is unforgivable. The girl will be immediately fired. I'll see to it. Wait, Marcus interrupted her, still calm. Then he looked at Safir, and something strange flickered in his eyes. Are you nervous? Yes, Your Excellency, Safir admitted. Very. Why? The question caught her off guard. Because I ruined your evening, your clothes. Because you're afraid of losing your job, he finished for her. I see. He turned to Auntie Lily. How much is this bottle? About $2,000, Your Excellency. And my suit? How much would dry cleaning or buying a new one cost, approximately? Auntie Lily was confused, not understanding what he was getting at. Let's say $3,000, Marcus answered himself. Total $5,000 in damages. A lot for a waitress who earns what a month? $1,000. Your Excellency, Safir whispered, barely audible. Even worse, Marcus nodded. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he smiled. You know what? Let's make this more interesting. He took out his phone from his suit pocket, swiped a few times, then handed it to his assistant. Mr. Tan, transfer $5,000 to the hotel as compensation. Now he turned to Safir, and in his eyes, there was that sparkle she had seen when he was bidding at the auction. I want to offer you a deal. A deal? Safir repeated, not understanding. Yes, a deal that will fully atone for your mistake, and even bring you a very good profit. He pointed to the luxurious concert Steinway Model D grand piano, standing in the corner of the hall on a small stage. The instrument was part of the interior. Sometimes a guest pianist would play during special events, but tonight it simply served as decoration. See that piano? Marcus asked. Yes, Safir replied warily, feeling her heart begin to beat faster. If you go to it right now and sing for us. For me and my friends. One song, just one. I will pay you $5 million in cash. The words fell into the ensuing silence, like stones into still water. Everyone close enough to hear froze. $5 million for one song. It was madness. Safir stood, unable to utter a word. Her face was pale, lips slightly parted, eyes wide with shock. She looked at Marcus, then at the piano, then back at him, as if she couldn't believe the reality of what was happening. I don't understand, she finally managed to stammer. It's very simple, Marcus smiled, clearly enjoying the effect his words had. You go to the piano, you sing one song, any song you want, and you get $5 million. Transferred to any country, any bank, absolutely legally. Money that will change your life. But why? Safir whispered. Why are you doing this? Marcus pondered for a second, then shrugged. Because I'm bored. Because I spent the whole evening buying paintings of which I already own hundreds, discussing deals that no longer bring the same excitement. Because I want to see something real, unexpected. Because, he looked at her intently. Because I see something in your eyes that tells me you are not just a waitress. You're mistaken, Safir said sharply. I am an ordinary waitress, nothing more. Then refuse the money, Marcus simply said. If you are an ordinary waitress with nothing to hide, then $5 million should be an irresistible offer. Just go to the piano and sing. A children's song, a popular hit, a national anthem, it doesn't matter. The main thing is that it's genuine. Safir felt the walls closing in around her. This man, this arrogant, self-assured billionaire, had just stepped on the most painful wound of her life. He didn't know he was offering her not just to sing. He was offering her to return to the world she had fled 3 years ago. A world that had destroyed her, betrayed her, spat her out like a used thing. The piano, singing, the stage, all this was part of a past Safir had buried deep within, vowing never to return. But $5 million, that was a sum that would solve all her problems. She could help her mother, who remained in Lyon, sick and lonely. She could pay off the debts accumulated after that catastrophic scandal. She could start life anew, truly anew, without hiding under the mask of a waitress. But the price? And if I refuse? She asked quietly, raising her eyes to Marcus. Then I will learn that some things truly cannot be bought, he replied. And for the first time, his voice held something akin to genuine interest, not just the boredom of a rich man seeking entertainment. And that, I admit, would be even more interesting than if you accepted. They looked at each other for several long seconds. Around them, the hall held its breath. Auntie Lily stood with her mouth open, not knowing what to do. Marcus's friends exchanged glances, clearly enjoying the unexpected turn of events. Other guests in the hall slowly moved closer, drawn by the drama unfolding before their eyes. Safir Maurol stood at a crossroads. To her left was the safe but arduous path. To refuse, to remain an invisible waitress, to continue fighting for survival day after day. To her right was the dangerous, frightening path. To return to what she had fled, to risk opening old wounds, but to gain a chance at true freedom. And, unexpectedly, even to herself, she made a choice. "All right," Safir said, and her voice was firmer than she expected. "I will sing for you, but not for $5 million. A wave of surprised whispers rippled through the hall. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Not for 5? Then for how much?" "For free," Safir replied calmly. "I will sing because you are right. I am indeed not just a waitress. But let this not be a transaction, but—" She searched for the word. "An act of dignity. Let this be a reminder to myself, and to everyone present here, that not everything in this world can be bought and sold." For a few seconds, Marcus Lim remained silent, studying her face. Then, to everyone's surprise, he slowly nodded. "Accepted. Sing for free. But if, after your performance, I decide it was worth it, the 5 million will still be transferred to your account. That will be my choice, not yours." "As you wish." Safir turned and walked towards the piano. Each of her steps echoed in the ensuing silence. 100 pairs of eyes followed the tall girl in the modest black uniform as she crossed the luxurious hall. She moved as if in a dream, feeling detached, as if it were happening not to her but to someone else. Ascending the small stage, Safir paused before the piano. The black lacquered Steinway Model D, one of the world's finest concert instruments, gleamed in the soft light of the chandeliers. She ran her hand over its smooth surface, and memories instantly surfaced. Of other pianos, other stages, another life. Slowly, she sat on the stool, adjusted its height. A gesture her hands remembered perfectly, though 3 years had passed. She lifted the lid, revealing the keyboard. The black and white keys looked at her like old friends she had betrayed, fled from, but who still awaited her return. Safir closed her eyes, took a deep breath. Absolute silence reigned in the hall. Even the air conditioners seemed to have hushed, so as not to interfere with what was about to happen. And she began to play. The first chords were quiet, almost timid. A simple melody she had composed many years ago while studying at the conservatory. She called it Souvenir, memory in French. The music was melancholic, filled with a longing for something lost, yet in it also resonated hope, a thin thread of light in the darkness. Her fingers moved across the keys with a certainty that could not be forgotten. Just as one cannot forget how to breathe or walk. Years of working as a waitress, years of trying to forget who she was, instantly vanished. Safir was herself again, not a uniform, not a mask, but the person she was born to be. And then she sang. Her voice rose above the piano, pure, crystalline, filled with such emotional power that people in the hall felt goosebumps ripple across their skin. It was not merely a voice. It was an instrument of divine beauty, a soprano of astonishing purity and power, heard once in a generation. She sang in French an old folk song about separation and loss that her grandmother had sung to her as a child. The words were simple, almost primitive, but the way Safir performed them transformed this simplicity into something transcendent. The voice filled the vast hall, echoing off the marble walls, off the crystal chandeliers, penetrating the heart of every person there. It was neither technique nor professionalism. It was raw, unadulterated emotion, pain and beauty compressed into sound. Marcus Lim sat frozen in his seat, unable to tear his gaze from the woman at the piano. His usually imperturbable face expressed something akin to shock. His mouth was slightly agape, his eyes wide. The man who in his life had seen and heard all the best the art world had to offer, suddenly realized he had never before heard anything like this. It was not just a song. It was a confession, a cry from the soul, a story of a lost homeland, of shattered dreams, of a pain that never fully fades, but which can be transformed into beauty. Safir sang as only one who has passed through hell and survived can sing. Every note was imbued with experience, every word with truth. A quiet sob rippled through the hall. Several women wept, unashamed of their tears. Men, accustomed to controlling their emotions, sat with stone faces, but their eyes gleamed suspiciously bright. The song reached its climax, a moment when Safir's voice soared to an impossible height, holding a note with such purity and power that the crystal glasses on the tables began to subtly resonate. It was physically impossible, but it was happening right now. And then, as suddenly as it began, the song ended. The last chord melted into the air, the final note faded and disappeared, leaving behind a ringing silence that was louder than any applause. Safir sat motionless, her hands still resting on the keys, her head bowed. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She hadn't even noticed when she started crying. It was a catharsis, a release of 3 years of silence, 3 years of trying to forget who she was. The silence lingered, stretched, until it became almost unbearable. And then one person began to clap. Marcus Lim rose from his seat and applauded slowly, distinctly, looking at Safir with an expression that could only be called reverence. His applause was a signal. The hall erupted. People sprang to their feet, clapping so loudly that the sound echoed off the walls like thunder. Someone shouted bravo. Others simply watched through tears. This was not merely a reaction to a good performance. It was a reaction to a miracle, to a moment of absolute, unfeigned beauty in a world where everything could be bought and sold. Safir slowly rose from the stool. Her legs trembled, her heart pounded as if it would leap from her chest. She looked at the hall, at all those faces, at Marcus, who continued to applaud with the expression of a man who had just experienced a revelation. And at that moment, she understood. No matter how far she ran, no matter how deep she hid, she could not deny who she was. Voice, music, art. This was not a profession, not a career. It was her essence, what made her herself. Marcus slowly crossed the hall, ascended the stage, and stood before her. In his dark eyes burned something new, something Safir hadn't seen before. Neither arrogance, nor boredom, nor mere curiosity. It was respect. "Who are you?" he asked softly, so only she could hear. "Who are you, really?" Safir hesitated for a second, then decided, secrets, lies, escape. All that was over. If this evening had taught her anything, it was that one couldn't run from the truth. "Safir Maurol," she said. 3 years ago I was known as Sophie Maurol, a soloist at Milan's La Scala Opera House, until everything fell apart. Marcus looked at her intently, not interrupting, letting her continue. "There was a scandal," Safir continued, her voice trembling with memories. "I was accused of something I didn't do. The theater director, his wife, influential people whom I considered friends. Everyone turned away. The press tore me apart. My career ended overnight, and I ran away, changed my name, hid, tried to become someone else. But it turns out," she smiled sadly, "you can't run from yourself." "Sophie Maurol," Marcus repeated, and recognition entered his voice. "I read about you 3 years ago in the business news. There was a scandal about embezzlement at the theater, and you were accused of complicity," she finished. "I was innocent, but when influential people decide you're guilty, your innocence doesn't matter. I won the court case, but my reputation was destroyed. No theater wanted to associate with me. My agent terminated my contract. Friends disappeared, and I decided that if the art world didn't want me, then I didn't want the art world." "But you continued to sing?" Marcus asked. "No," Safir shook her head. "This is the first time in 3 years, the first time since that night in Milan when it all ended. I thought I had killed the singer in me, but it turns out she's still alive, just hiding." Marcus was silent for a few seconds, processing what he had heard. Then, unexpectedly, extended his hand. "I apologize," he simply said. "For what?" Safir didn't understand. For turning your return to music into a performance, a transaction. I didn't know. I thought it would be an amusing game, a way to entertain myself on a boring evening. I didn't realize I was stepping on an open wound. Safir looked at the extended hand, then slowly shook it. His handshake was firm, warm, unexpectedly human for someone who seemed the embodiment of cold power and wealth. The offer of 5 million still stands, Marcus said. No, don't interrupt. He stopped her when Safir opened her mouth. This is not payment for the performance. Consider it an investment. In a talent that the world almost lost due to foolishness and injustice. You will return them when you become what you are meant to be again, the greatest singer of your generation. I can't accept, Safir began. But Marcus was already pulling out his phone. Mr. Tan, he addressed his assistant, who stood at the edge of the stage. Arrange for a transfer of $5 million to Miss Maurol's name. All legal, through my personal charitable foundation. Category: Support for artistic talent. Also, contact Antonio Ferrara in Milan. Yes, that producer. Tell him I've found something special for him. Wait! Safir grabbed his arm. You can't just... I can, Marcus calmly replied. And I'm doing it not out of pity, not on a whim. I'm doing it because I just heard something that reminded me why I love art in the first place. You gave me a gift with this performance. You gave all of us. Let me give you something in return, a chance to come back. He turned to the hall, where people still stood, unable to move from the experience. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus said loudly, his voice resonating through the room. Today, we witnessed something rare. Not just a beautiful performance, but a rebirth. The woman you just heard is not a waitress. She is Sophie Maurol, one of the greatest sopranos of our time, who was unjustly forced into hiding for the past 3 years. A surprised murmur rippled through the hall. Several people pulled out their phones, obviously, Googling the name. Those who remembered the 3-year-old scandal nodded in understanding. From this moment on, Marcus continued, I personally guarantee that Miss Maurol will receive every opportunity to return to the stage where she belongs. Any theater, any concert hall, any venue where she wishes to perform will be open to her. This is not a request. This is my demand, to those of you connected with the world of art. He spoke with the calm assurance of a man accustomed to his words becoming reality. And everyone present knew that when Marcus Lim promised something, that promise was fulfilled. Safir stood beside him, stunned by the speed with which her life was turning upside down. An hour ago, she had been an invisible waitress, an unnoticed shadow at someone else's celebration. Now she stood on stage, proclaimed a resurrected star under the protection of one of Singapore's most influential men. It was too much, too fast. Her head spun, her knees buckled, and suddenly Safir felt a strong hand supporting her elbow. Easy, Marcus said softly. Breathe. Don't collapse now. It'll ruin the whole dramatic effect. Despite everything, Safir smiled. There was a warm irony in his voice that grounded her, making the situation less surreal. Are you all right? He asked more seriously. I don't know, Safir answered honestly. It's all too much. Too fast, too unexpected, too good to be true, he finished. I understand, but it is true. And you will handle it, because you've already been through worse and survived. Coming back will be the easy part. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. People approached Safir, introduced themselves, offered business cards, proposed contracts, invited her for auditions. One guest turned out to be the producer of a major music festival in Verona, another the director of the Paris Opera, a third a representative of the Deutsche Grammophon record label. Marcus did not leave her side, gently but firmly filtering out those who tried to exploit the situation for their own gain, and directing only serious professionals to her. He was like a shield, protecting her from overly aggressive offers, and at the same time, a bridge, connecting her with the right people. By midnight, when the last guests had departed, Safir sat in the hotel manager's small office, where Marcus had led her so she could compose herself. On the table lay a stack of business cards, over 30 of them, each from a person who wanted to work with her. Is this real? She asked quietly, sifting through the cards. Or will I wake up tomorrow and realize it was all a dream? Real. Marcus sat opposite her, watching her with a soft expression that differed so much from the cold arrogance of the beginning of the evening. Very real, and very deserved. Why are you doing this? Safir asked, looking up at him. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Marcus pondered, choosing his words. You know, when you're born into a family with wealth like mine, you quickly realize that money can buy almost anything. Companies, real estate, art, even people. But there are things money cannot buy. Talent is one of them. True talent, like yours, is born once in a generation. And when I see such talent wasted, hidden, perishing due to someone else's injustice, it's a crime against art itself. He stood, walked to the window, beyond which glittering nighttime Singapore sparkled. Besides, he continued, without turning around, today you gave me a gift, without even realizing it. You reminded me that there are things that transcend money and power. There is beauty, truth, emotion that cannot be faked or bought. I heard your voice and, for the first time in many years, felt. He searched for the word. Pure admiration. Not the pride of buying an expensive painting, not the pleasure of a successful deal, just admiration for something beautiful. Marcus turned to her. So, in reality, you're doing me a favor by accepting my help. You're giving me the opportunity to be part of something real. In a world where almost everything is a fake, that's a rare privilege. Safir looked at him, and for the first time that evening, she truly saw the man, not a symbol of wealth and power. In his eyes was a sincerity that couldn't be faked. And something else. Loneliness, weariness, a desire to be something more than just an heir to a fortune. Thank you, she simply said. For everything. Nothing to thank me for yet, he added with a slight smile. Wait until the real work begins. Returning to the stage after 3 years, it won't be easy, but you'll manage. If you could survive, you can return. He took out an elegant business card from his pocket, handed her his personal number. Call me if you need anything at all. Advice, support, help with problems, or just to talk. I have a feeling our paths will cross many more times. Safir took the card, and their fingers brushed for a second. A simple, accidental touch, but for some reason, it resonated with something in her chest. She quickly withdrew her hand, embarrassed by her own reaction. It's late, Marcus said, giving no sign that he noticed her embarrassment. My car will take you home. And one more thing. He walked to the table, placed a small envelope on it. Here are the keys to an apartment in Marina Bay. It stands empty. I bought it as an investment but never used it. 3 bedrooms, sea view, fully furnished. Move in tonight. No arguments, he stopped her objection. A world-class star cannot live in a rented room in Geylang. It's part of the image we need to rebuild. With these words, he left the office, leaving Safir alone with her thoughts, a stack of business cards, and an envelope with keys to a life she couldn't have imagined just hours ago. She sat in silence, trying to comprehend everything that had happened. The clock on the wall showed almost 1 in the morning. In just 5 hours, her life had turned 180 degrees. From waitress uniform to stage, from secrecy to openness, from despair to hope. Safir took out her phone, found her mother's number in her contacts. It was an hour earlier in Lyon, but her mother was surely awake. She rarely slept well in recent years. After her illness, after all the hardships, ring. Once, twice. Then a familiar, weary voice. Safir, are you all right? It's so late. Maman. Safir switched to French, her voice trembling with emotion. Maman, something incredible has happened to me. I sang again. For the first time in 3 years, and everything has changed. A sob could be heard through the phone. My daughter, I knew you couldn't hide forever. A voice like yours cannot be hidden. Tell me everything. And Safir told her about Marcus, about the offer, about how she resisted, then gave in, about the song she sang, about the reaction of the people, about how everything had changed in one evening. Your grandmother always said, her mother said when Safir finished, that talent is not just a gift, it's a duty to share it with the world, no matter what. You tried to run from that duty, but it caught up to you. And that's right, my daughter, that's right. They talked for another half hour, and when Safir finally hung up, she felt lighter than she had in the entire last year, as if the burden she carried on her shoulders had become a little smaller. A soft knock at the door. Auntie Lily peered inside. Safir, sorry to bother you. Mr. Lim's car is waiting for you at the service entrance. And also, she hesitated. The manager wants to speak with you. Tomorrow morning. Safir nodded. She understood that after tonight, she could hardly continue working as an ordinary waitress, nor did she want to. That chapter of her life had ended the moment she sat at the piano. Thank you, Auntie Lily, for everything, for your kindness, for your patience. The elderly Singaporean smiled. I felt from the first day you weren't like the others. There was something special about you. I'm glad the world finally saw it. The car, a black Mercedes S-Class with tinted windows and a driver in an impeccable suit, glided softly through the night streets of Singapore. Safir sat in the back seat, upholstered in leather that cost more than all the furniture in her Geylang room, and watched the lights passing by the window. The city was beautiful at night. Skyscrapers glittered in all the colors of the rainbow. The Marina Bay Sands light show danced to music. Yachts swayed in the marina, their lights reflecting in the dark water. This was a city of opportunities, a city where the most incredible dreams became reality. And now, for the first time since she arrived here 3 months ago, Safir felt that she was truly part of this city. Not a temporary guest, not a fugitive hiding from the past, but a person with a future here. The apartment in Marina Bay proved even more luxurious than she imagined. Floor-to-ceiling panoramic windows overlooked the Persian Gulf. Italian designer furniture, a kitchen with Miele appliances, a bathroom with marble finishes, and a jacuzzi large enough to swim in. It wasn't just a home, it was a work of art. Safir walked through the empty rooms, still not believing it was all hers now. On the coffee table in the living room, she found a handwritten note on expensive watermarked paper. Welcome home. Fridge is stocked, linen is fresh, Wi-Fi password is on the back. Rest, recover, and tomorrow we'll start working on your comeback. M. A simple business note, but for some reason, it warmed her heart. This man, this enigmatic scion, who just hours ago was just another arrogant billionaire, had turned out to be kind, understanding, or just good at creating the right impression. Safir didn't know, but she felt a long, complex journey lay ahead. And somehow, it was more comforting to know she wouldn't be walking that path alone. She went into the bedroom, collapsed onto the huge bed that was softer than a cloud, and for the first time in 3 years, she fell asleep without nightmares, without memories of that terrible evening in Milan, without fear of tomorrow, without the weight of secrets and lies. She just slept, deeply, peacefully, like a person who had finally returned home after a long and difficult journey. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus, true to his word, didn't just offer help. He organized a whole campaign for Safir's return to the music scene. His PR team worked around the clock, repairing her damaged reputation, spreading information about her innocence in that old scandal, contacting journalists, critics, producers. Antonio Ferrara, the legendary Italian producer who discovered stars like Andrea Bocelli and Cecilia Bartoli, flew to Singapore specifically to meet with Safir. A short, energetic man in his 60s with a shock of curly gray hair and the burning eyes of a fanatic in love with music. The meeting took place in one of Marcus's private studios, a professional recording studio equipped with state-of-the-art technology. Antonio asked Safir to simply sing a few arias from her old repertoire. She chose O mio babbino caro by Puccini, La Wali by Catalani, and Casta Diva by Bellini. Classic soprano parts she knew by heart. When the last note faded, Antonio sat silently for a few seconds, then slowly stood and walked to her. Mamma mia, he whispered in Italian. Mamma mia, Safir. Your voice. It hasn't just returned. It has matured, deepened. The 3-year break hasn't destroyed it. It has enriched it. This is a gift from the gods. He turned to Marcus, who had been observing the audition from the control booth. You were right, Antonio said. She truly is something special. I am ready to work with her. Conditions, Marcus asked curtly, shifting into business mode. 3 months of intensive preparation. She needs to regain her stage form, work on breath control, expand her repertoire. Then a debut concert. I'm thinking of Verona, at the Opera Arena Festival. Not a full opera initially, a concert of arias and duets. Then, if all goes well, we can talk about full productions. Funding, Marcus continued. Fully from your foundation, as agreed. I will not take a percentage of her future fees. Consider it my contribution to the revival of true art. They discussed the details for another hour, and Safir, sitting between them, felt like a chess piece being moved across the board by 2 grandmasters. It was a strange sensation. On one hand, liberating, because she didn't have to make all the decisions herself. On the other, a little frightening, because control over her career had passed into other hands. But when Antonio left and she and Marcus were alone in the studio, she finally decided to speak up. May I ask you something? Safir began. Of course. Marcus leaned back on the sofa, watching her intently. Why are you doing this? And don't give me that answer about talent and art. I'm not naive. People like you don't do anything just because. There's always a reason, a benefit, an interest. Marcus chuckled. Cynical, but fair. He stood, walked around the studio, hands in the pockets of his jeans. Today he was dressed informally. Simple jeans, A white shirt, no traditional formal wear. In this attire, he looked younger, more approachable, just like a successful man, not an oligarch from Southeast Asia. "Do you want an honest answer?" he asked, stopping by the window. "Yes, because I'm lonely," Marcus simply said, without turning around. Not in a romantic sense, although in that too. Lonely in an existential sense. "I was born with such wealth that most people don't encounter in their entire lives. Everything I want, I can get. Everything I say becomes reality. People around me are either afraid or trying to use me." He turned to her. "And then you appear. A woman who refuses $5 million because her dignity is more important. Who hides, works as a waitress but doesn't give up, doesn't break. Who, when cornered, doesn't cry or run but sings so beautifully that the entire room gets goosebumps." He took a step towards her. "You interest me, Safir Maurul, not as a project, not as an investment, but as a person. For the first time in many years, I've met someone who isn't trying to please me, isn't afraid of me, doesn't want anything from me. And that's refreshing." Safir looked at him, not knowing what to say. There was an openness in his words she hadn't expected, and something else, a vulnerability from a man who seemed impregnable. "I'm not looking for romance," Marcus continued, as if reading her thoughts. "I'm not trying to seduce you or buy you. I just want friendship, partnership. Perhaps it sounds ridiculous from a man of my status." "No," Safir shook her head. "It doesn't sound ridiculous. It sounds human." "Then let's be honest with each other," Marcus suggested. "I'm helping you return because I truly believe in your talent, but also because you make my life less empty. And you accept my help not out of mercantilism, but because you need it. Let's just be ourselves. No games, no pretense." Safir thought about it. This offer was strange, unusual, but also honest. And perhaps precisely this honesty was what they both lacked so much. "All right," she said. "Let's try." Marcus smiled, and this smile was warm, genuine, without a trace of the coldness she had seen on the first night. "Excellent. Then, as a friend, allow me to give you a piece of advice. Preparation for the Verona concert will be tough. Antonio is a genius, but also a tyrant. He will wring everything out of you. There will be days when you want to give up everything, but don't do it, because you've already been through worse. This will just be work." "I'm ready," Safir said. And for the first time in years, she truly felt that readiness. The 3 months of preparation truly were hell. Antonio Ferrara hadn't lied. He was a tyrant in the studio. Every day, 8 hours of vocal exercises, breath work, learning new parts, rehearsals with an accompanist. He forgave not the slightest carelessness, not a single false note, not a second of relaxation. Again, he would shout when Safir, exhausted, tried to tackle a difficult passage from Bellini's Norma. "You have the voice of an angel, but your technique is faltering." Again, and she would start again, and again, and again, until it was perfect. But amidst this hell, there was an island of calm. Marcus. He did not attend rehearsals. Antonio categorically forbade outsiders in the studio, but he called every evening just to ask how things were. Sometimes he would come over after an especially tough day, bringing dinner from the city's best restaurants, and they would just sit on the terrace of her new apartment, watching the sea and talking. They talked about everything and nothing. About music and business, art and politics, childhood and dreams. Marcus spoke about his life, not the Forbes magazine version, but the real one. About the pressure of being the heir to an empire. About family expectations. About how difficult it was to understand who you truly were when your entire life was defined by your bank account. "Sometimes I envy ordinary people," he confessed one day. "Those who can go on a date without fearing that the woman is only interested in money. Who can make mistakes without fearing that mistake will cost people their jobs. Who just live without carrying all this weight of responsibility on their shoulders." "But you can't give it all up?" Safir asked. "I can't. It's my duty, my role. I was born into this family, received this wealth. Now I must manage it wisely. It's not a right, but an obligation." Safir understood. Her talent was the same. Not just a gift, but an obligation. She couldn't just hide, work as a waitress, abandon what the gods had given her. She had to sing, no matter how difficult or frightening. They were alike, she realized. Both carried something they couldn't give up. Both played roles assigned to them. And both sought moments when they could simply be themselves, without masks or expectations. Slowly, imperceptibly, friendship was transforming into something more. Not love yet, no, but an attachment, a closeness, a trust that rarely develops between people. A week before the concert, Safir felt a surge of panic. They were due to fly to Verona in 3 days. Tickets were sold out, the press conference scheduled. Everything was ready. But suddenly, fear enveloped her so intensely she couldn't breathe. It was late at night. Safir couldn't sleep, pacing her apartment, trying to calm down, but the fear only grew. What if she failed? What if she forgot the words? What if her voice betrayed her? What if, after all this, after Marcus's help, Antonio's faith, the audience's expectations, she disappointed everyone? Without thinking, she dialed his number. Rings. 1, 2, 3. She almost hung up when a sleepy voice answered. Safir, what's wrong? What time is it? 3 a.m. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called. Where are you? Marcus's voice instantly became alert, concerned. Home, in the apartment. I'm fine, I just can't sleep. I can't calm down. I'm afraid, Marcus. So afraid. I'll be there in 20 minutes. No, you don't need to. But he had already hung up. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Safir opened it, and Marcus stood on the threshold in track pants and a t-shirt, with disheveled hair and a worried expression. No security, no assistant, none of the usual entourage that surrounded him. Let me in, he simply said. They sat on the sofa in the living room. Marcus said nothing, just sat beside her while Safir, hugging her knees, tried to control the trembling in her hands. Tell me, he finally said, what scares you? And she told him about her last performance in Milan, the day before everything collapsed, about standing backstage, hearing the applause, feeling the euphoria of a successful show, and the next day it began. Accusations, investigations, newspaper articles, photographs of her being led out of the police station. I didn't do anything wrong. Safir's voice trembled. I was just naive. I trusted the wrong people. The theater director used my name to launder money, and when he was caught, he blamed it all on me, said I was his accomplice, that I helped him. It was a lie. But who cares about the truth when there's a good scandal? Marcus listened, not interrupting. The worst part wasn't the accusation, Safir continued. The worst part was how quickly everyone turned away from me. Colleagues I had worked with for years, friends I considered close, an agent who swore he would always be on my side. Everyone disappeared, as if I were a leper. She looked at Marcus. And now, when I have a second chance, I'm so afraid of missing it. But even more, I'm afraid of going through the same thing again, to rise again, only to fall again. I'm not sure I can handle it another time. Marcus was silent for a minute, considering her words, then stood, walked to the panoramic window, beyond which lay nighttime Singapore. Do you know the difference between a person who is truly strong and one who merely creates the appearance of strength? He asked, without turning around. What is it? A strong person is not one who never falls. It's one who falls, breaks, but gets up again, perhaps slowly, perhaps painfully, but gets up. Those who create the appearance of strength are just afraid to fall, so they never take risks. He turned to her. You've already been through the worst, Safir. You fell from the greatest height possible. You lost everything. Your career, your reputation, your faith in people. But what did you do? You didn't give up, you didn't break, you found a way to survive, and now you're coming back. That is true strength. He sat beside her, their shoulders touching. As for the possibility of falling again, yes, it exists. Life offers no guarantees. But here's the difference between then and now. Then, you were alone. Now, you're not. You have Antonio, who believes in you. You have me, who won't turn away, no matter what happens. And most importantly, you have experience. You know how to fall. You know how to get up. That knowledge is more valuable than any wealth. Safir felt the trembling in her hands gradually subside. His words, his presence, the very fact that he had come in the middle of the night without asking too many questions, all of it was calming. Thank you, she said softly. For coming, for everything. Nothing to thank me for, Marcus interrupted. That's what friends do. They sat in silence, shoulder to shoulder, looking at the city lights outside the window. And Safir understood that the feelings developing between them were no longer just friendship. It was something deeper, stronger, frightening in its intensity. But neither she nor he were ready to admit it aloud. Not yet. First, she had to return to the stage, prove to herself and the world that she was still capable. And then they would see. Marcus stayed until morning. They just talked, then drifted off on the sofa, covered by a throw blanket. When Safir woke at dawn, he was still there, and his presence was the most peaceful she had felt in a long time. The Arena di Verona, An ancient Roman amphitheater built 2,000 years ago was filled to capacity, 15,000 spectators, from ordinary opera lovers to connoisseurs, critics, and journalists from around the world. All had come to witness the return of Sophie Maurol, the legend who had vanished 3 years ago and was now rising from the ashes. Backstage, a controlled panic reigned. Antonio scurried with a tablet, checking the last details. Orchestral musicians tuned their instruments. Wardrobe assistants made final adjustments to Safir's gowns. She was to change 3 outfits during the evening. Safir herself sat in her dressing room, looking at her reflection in the mirror. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in an elegant updo. She wore a white silk gown that flowed like water. On the outside, she appeared the embodiment of calm and elegance. Inside, a storm raged. A knock at the door. "Come in," she said, expecting Antonio or one of the assistants. But Marcus entered. He was in a tuxedo, perfectly fitted, emphasizing his tall figure, his hair neatly styled, his face cleanly shaven. He looked exactly as a young scion should at a gala event, impeccable. "May I?" he asked. "Of course." Marcus entered, closed the door behind him, and took a small velvet box from his pocket. "This is for you," he held it out, "for good luck." Safir opened the box and gasped. Inside lay a delicate gold necklace with a pendant. A small golden bird with outstretched wings, encrusted with tiny diamonds. "It's a phoenix," Marcus explained. "A bird that burns and is reborn from the ashes. I thought it fitting." "Marcus, I can't accept this. It's too much." "You can," he said calmly. "And you will. Because it's not just jewelry. It's a symbol. A reminder of who you are. You, Safir, are a phoenix. You burned, but you rose again. And today, the whole world will see it." He walked behind her, carefully fastened the necklace around her neck. His fingers lingered on her skin for a second, and a shiver ran down her spine from the touch. Their eyes met in the mirror. Marcus stood behind her, his hands still resting on her shoulders, and in the reflection, they looked like a couple, like two people between whom something important, significant, was happening. "You'll do great," he said softly. "I know it. I believe in you. And if not, then you'll try again, and again, until it works. But not working isn't an option. You're too talented, too strong to fail." Outside, Antonio's voice rang out. "Safir, 5 minutes. Time!" Marcus stepped back, and Safir stood. A last glance in the mirror, at the woman in the white dress, with the golden phoenix on her neck. This woman looked like a star. She just needed to believe that she was that star. "Go," Marcus said, smiling. "Show them who Sophie Maurol is." Safir left the dressing room, walked down the dark corridor to the wings of the stage. She heard her name announced, heard the hall erupt in applause. The conductor was already on the podium, ready to give the signal to the orchestra. A deep breath, a slow exhale. Once more. And Safir Maurol, known to the world as Sophie Maurol, stepped onto the stage of the Arena di Verona. The stage lights blinded her for a second. Then her eyes adjusted, and she saw them. Thousands of people filling the ancient amphitheater. Faces dissolved into the darkness of the distant rows, but the front rows she saw clearly. And in the very first row, in the center, sat Marcus. Beside him were other VIP guests, but Safir saw only him. He smiled, and that smile gave her strength. The conductor raised his baton. The orchestra played the first bars of O mio babbino caro, and Safir sang. Her voice soared over the arena, pure, crystalline, filled with emotion. It was an aria about a daughter's love for her father, about a willingness to do anything for a loved one. And Safir sang it, thinking of her own father, whom she had lost young, of her mother, who waited for her at home, of everyone who believed in her. The audience froze. No one stirred, no one coughed. 15,000 people listened in absolute silence, captivated by a voice that sounded as if an angel had descended to earth. The aria ended. A second of silence. Then, an explosion. The applause was so deafening that Safir physically felt it like a wave. People jumped to their feet shouting "Bravo!" waving handkerchiefs, a traditional sign of the highest approval in the opera world. But the concert had only just begun. 2 more hours lay ahead. 23 arias from various operas, 3 costume changes, a duet with the famous tenor Luca Salsi, the final scene from Verdi's La Traviata, and Safir performed flawlessly, every note pure, every phrase emotional, every gesture elegant. She was not just a singer, she was the embodiment of music, a living instrument through which composers spoke to the world. When the curtain fell after the final aria, Safir stood on stage, breathing heavily, barely believing it was all over. But the curtain rose again for the bows, and the hall once more erupted in applause. 8 minutes of standing ovation. People didn't want to let her go, demanding encores. Safir came out for a fourth bow, and then she saw someone from the front rows ascending the stage. Marcus. In his hands was an enormous basket of white roses. He walked to her, and all cameras, all eyes were fixed on the two of them. "You were incredible," he said, so only she could hear, and handed her the flowers. Then, to everyone's surprise, he bowed before her. Not just a nod of the head, a truly deep bow, a gesture of profound respect. The hall fell silent, then the applause grew even louder. This image, the young Singaporean Sion bowing to the singer on stage, became iconic. Photographs flew around the world's publications the next day. After the concert was a reception. People approached Safir, congratulated her, offered contracts, asked for autographs. Critics, who had torn her apart in the press 3 years ago, were now writing glowing reviews directly from the event. Theater directors from Vienna, Milan, Paris, London lined up to invite her for the next season. But Safir saw only Marcus. He stood to the side, watching her with a soft smile. When their eyes met across the hall, he raised a glass of champagne in her honor. She excused herself from yet another opera director and headed towards Marcus. They met on a terrace overlooking the ancient arena's inner courtyard, where it was quiet and they could speak without witnesses. "Thank you," Safir said, "for everything, for your belief, for your support, for not letting me give up." "Don't thank me." Marcus shook his head. "It was your victory, your voice, your courage. I merely opened the door. You walked through it yourself." They stood, looking at each other, and the tension between them was almost palpable. Something was happening, something was changing, moving to a new level. "Marcus, Safir began, but didn't know how to continue. "I know," he said softly. "Me too." He stepped closer, and the space between them narrowed to inches. Safir felt the warmth of his body, the scent of his cologne, saw the pulse beating in his neck. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "The worst," he agreed. "Our lives are too different, absolutely incompatible. It won't work. It's doomed to fail." And yet, they drew closer to each other, as if pulled by an invisible force. When their lips finally met, Safir felt as if the entire world ceased to exist. There was only this moment, this kiss, this man. They kissed slowly, gently, as if afraid to break something fragile and precious. It wasn't passion, not yet. It was something deeper. Recognition, acceptance, a promise. When they finally broke apart, Marcus placed a hand on her cheek, his thumb gently stroking her skin. "You know what's funny?" he said. 3 months ago, I thought I was offering you a deal for $5 million, and I got something priceless. And what did you get?" Safir smiled. "You," Marcus replied. "And that's worth more than all my billions." The following months were a whirlwind. Contracts with the world's best opera houses, album recordings, interviews, photo shoots for the covers of music magazines. Safir Maurul became one of the most sought-after singers in the world, and her name was on everyone's lips. But even more attention was drawn not to her professional successes, but to her relationship with Marcus Lim. Paparazzi caught them on dates in the best restaurants in Singapore, Paris, Rome. Tabloids theorized about when they would marry. Bloggers debated whether a French opera diva could truly become the wife of the heir to a billionaire fortune. This pressure was intense. Every step they took was photographed, every word analyzed. Privacy became a luxury they could only dream of. "Sometimes I just want to disappear," Safir admitted one day when they were hiding in his private villa in the mountains of Batam, trying to steal a few days without cameras and questions. "To go somewhere where no one knows us and just be. That's called the moon," Marcus chuckled. "The only place where they definitely don't know us. Although, knowing the paparazzi, they'd probably get there too." But the jokes didn't hide the real problem. Their relationship was complex not only due to external pressure. There were internal challenges as well. Marcus's family, though progressive by regional standards, was not entirely ready to accept a European singer as a daughter-in-law. His mother, an elegant and formidable woman, made it clear at their first meeting that she considered Safir interesting but unsuitable. "She's not a local, Marcus, Mrs. Lim said during one of the family dinners when Safir had gone to another room. "She doesn't know our traditions, our customs. How will she fit into our family?" "She doesn't have to fit in, Mum," Marcus calmly replied. "She just has to be herself. That's why I love her." "Love is beautiful," his mother sighed. "But marriage is not only about love. It's a union of families, cultures, traditions. Then perhaps it's time to rethink what union means in the 21st century. Safia knew about these conversations, although Marcus tried to shield her from them. She felt the tension, saw the appraising glances of his relatives at family gatherings. And it was difficult, constantly having to prove her worth, that she wasn't just a gold digger interested in his money. But even harder was balancing their two lives. Safia's career required constant travel, a month in Vienna, 2 in Milan, a season in New York. Marcus's business required his presence in Singapore, Hong Kong, at meetings with partners around the world. They saw each other in snatched moments between her performances and his meetings. Their relationship consisted of video calls, text messages across different time zones, stolen weekends when they could meet halfway somewhere in Europe. "This can't go on forever," Safia said after an especially difficult week when they hadn't seen each other for 2 weeks due to her American tour. "We're both exhausted. This distance, this constant tension." "What do you propose?" Marcus asked. They sat in her rented apartment in New York. Outside, the nightlife of Manhattan hummed. "I don't know," Safia answered honestly. "I can't give up singing. It's not a profession. It's who I am. But you can't abandon your responsibilities. So what do we do?" Marcus was silent, looking out the window. Then he turned to her. "Marry me," he simply said. Safia froze. "What?" "Marry me," Marcus repeated, now looking directly at her. "Not because it will solve all our problems, not because it will make everything easier, but because I want to go through these problems with you, officially, forever." "Marcus, that's crazy. We've only known each other for 6 months. Your family is against it. The press will tear us apart. We don't even know how to combine our lives." "I know," he interrupted. "I know all that, and I still want to. I want to wake up next to you, even if it's only a few times a month. I want you to be my wife, my partner, my family." He knelt down, a handsome, rich, influential man who could have anything he wanted, humbly asking for her hand. "Safir Maurol, will you marry me? I don't promise it will be easy, but I promise it will never be boring. And I promise to love you every day, no matter where in the world we are." Safia looked at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. This proposal was crazy, impractical, full of potential problems, but it was also the most sincere thing anyone had ever offered her. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Marcus placed a ring on her finger. Not a huge, vulgar one that might be expected from a billionaire, but a delicate one, with a single perfect diamond surrounded by small emeralds. "Green, like your eyes," he explained. "I wanted it to be personal, not just a display of wealth." They kissed, laughed, cried together, and despite all the problems that awaited them, in that moment, they were absolutely happy. The wedding, when it finally took place 6 months later, was the event of the year. 2 ceremonies. One, a modern, lavish affair at a colonial-era hotel ballroom in Singapore for his family and friends. Another, a Western-style ceremony in Paris for her relatives and colleagues from the opera world. At the Singaporean wedding, Safia wore an elegant, bespoke gown, adorned with subtle regional motifs and jewelry, surrounded by Marcus's family members who had finally accepted her after months of wariness. "You've made my son happy," Mrs. Lim said when they were alone. "That's all that truly matters to a mother. Forgive me for my coolness. I was just afraid he was choosing with his heart, not his head." "Sometimes the heart is wiser," Safia replied softly. At the Parisian wedding, she sang for Marcus. A private performance, just for him and a few close ones. Not an operatic aria, but a French folk song about love, the very one she had sung that first night in the hotel. "Full circle," Marcus cried. Unashamed of his tears, this strong, proud man wept, listening to the woman he loved sing only for him. "I never understood," he said afterward, holding her in his arms, "how people in operas can express love through song. It seemed unreal. But now I understand. You just told me I love you in 1,000 ways, with every note." Their marriage was not perfect. The problems with their schedules continued, the pressure from the press and family persisted. There were arguments, there were difficult moments when it seemed it wouldn't work. But they worked on the relationship. Marcus restructured his schedule to attend every one of her premieres, even if it meant flying across the world for one evening. Safia learned to embrace and love his culture, studying Malay and Mandarin, observing traditions when she was with his family. They created their own world, not entirely Western, not entirely Eastern, but a unique blend of 2 cultures, 2 lives, 2 strong personalities who chose to walk together. 2 years after their wedding, their son was born. They named him Adam, a name that sounded good in both Malay and French. A little boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes, who cried when Safir didn't sing to him before bed. "He's musical," Marcus laughed, rocking the wailing infant. "He knows quality. Only Mama can soothe him." Spoiled from birth, Safir winked, taking their son in her arms and beginning to hum a lullaby. Adam instantly calmed, captivated by his mother's voice. Safir's career did not slow down after the birth of her son. On the contrary, her voice matured, deepened, gaining new shades of emotion that only motherhood can give. Critics wrote that her performance of Madame Butterfly after Adam's birth was the most poignant in the history of opera. She sang of maternal love, not as an actress, but as a mother. And Marcus became her most devoted fan. At every premiere, in the front row, with a bouquet of roses, he applauded louder than anyone else. He was proud not of his fortune, his business, or his power, but of the woman he loved, the woman who had transformed his life from a series of transactions into a real story. "Remember that night?" Marcus asked one day as they sat on the terrace of their villa in Singapore, watching Adam play in the garden. "Which one?" Safir asked, though she knew the answer. "When I spilled champagne on you and, like an idiot, offered 5 million for a song. Best mistake of your life." "Best mistake," he agreed. "I thought I was buying entertainment for an evening, and I got a whole life." "You know what's most ironic?" Safir said. "If I had accepted that 5 million then, we probably never would have been together. I would have sung, taken the money, left. But I refused, and that intrigued you. It made you see a person in me, not a commodity. Then I thank God for your stubbornness and pride." Marcus smiled. They sat in silence, watching the sunset over Singapore, the city where it all began. And despite all the difficulties, all the challenges they had overcome, and still had to overcome, they were happy. Because sometimes the best stories don't begin with love at first sight or a perfect date. Sometimes they begin with spilled champagne, an insulting offer, and a woman who had the courage to say no to a man accustomed only to yes. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that story doesn't end with a fairy tale happily ever after, but with a real, genuine happiness, complex, imperfect, but absolutely authentic.